The story begins in a small, quiet village, surrounded by hills and fields. The sun is setting, casting a warm, golden glow over the community, which has an old-world charm. Life here is simple, and traditions run deep. People know each other by name, and the pace of life is slow but full of meaning. The houses are built with thatched roofs, and the streets are lined with trees that have witnessed generations of village history. Zara is a beautiful, young woman who has lived a sheltered life under the care of her wealthy but controlling father, Malik. He is a man of power in the village, one whose words are often law. Zara has always been the apple of his eye, the perfect daughter in his eyes. She is beautiful, graceful, and has a heart full of dreams. But despite her outwardly perfect life, Zara's world is constrained by her father's expectations. Her every move is controlled by his desires and plans for her future. She is not free to pursue her own dreams or desires. She is always under his watchful eye. Zara's father, Malik, has always had a specific vision for her life. To him, the most important thing is maintaining the family's reputation and status in the village. He has arranged for Zara to marry a man who can enhance their standing, someone of wealth and high status. But there is one problem. Zara doesn't love the man he has chosen. In fact, she knows very little about him, but that doesn't matter to Malik. To him, love is secondary to security and status. As the days pass, Malik pushes Zara toward a future she doesn't want, convincing her that marriage is a business transaction and that she must marry for her family's future, not for her heart's desires. Her life is mapped out for her, with no room for questioning and no chance to escape. She is trapped by her father's ambitions, and though she is grateful for the comforts of wealth, a part of her feels like a bird with clipped wings, yearning to fly free but too afraid to take that first step. She wonders if there will ever come a day when she can live life on her own terms. But fate has a different plan for Zara, one that will change the course of her life forever. Malik, ever the man of influence, is always on the lookout for opportunities to secure his family's place in the village. So when Syed, a beggar, arrives in the village, Malik sees an unexpected opening. Syed is a wanderer, someone who occasionally visits the village, but never stays for long. His reputation precedes him. He's known for his wisdom and kind nature, but his poor background and lack of any family connections have kept him an outsider. Syed may be wise, but to Malik he is nothing more than a man of low status with no potential for advancing his family's position. However, Malik's desire to marry Zara off to someone who will not question his authority leads him to see Syed in a different light. He convinces himself that by marrying Zara to a man with no wealth or social standing, he can more easily control her future. This decision is, in his eyes, a win-win. He gets rid of his daughter and secures a simple arrangement that causes no complications. Zara's feelings on the matter are irrelevant to him. After all, what more could she possibly want than the safety of marriage, even if it is with a beggar? One evening, after a quiet dinner in their grand home, Malik announces the arrangement to Zara. His words are sharp, casual, as if this is the only possible course of action. Zara listens in shock, her heart sinking as her father explains that she will marry Syed. Her life, already devoid of choice, seems now more confined than ever. She is stunned, her mind racing, but there is no space for protest. Malik's word is final. The news is a blow. Zara had never imagined that her father, the man she thought cared so much for her well-being, would force her into a marriage with someone so beneath her in every way. He tries to reassure her, but Zara can only hear the coldness in his voice. "This is the best for you, Zara. A man with no family will never question your place in the world," Malik says, as if he is providing her with a great gift. Zara's world, once rich with possibilities, now feels like it is shrinking around her. She is unable to refuse the marriage, and yet her heart rebels at the thought of being tied to a man she does not know. someone she sees as beneath her. She feels humiliated, confused, and alone. As the days pass, the weight of the decision presses down on her, and the walls of her father's world feel tighter than ever. Her thoughts are filled with anger and frustration, but there is nothing she can do. She is trapped in her father's rigid world, and the thought of marriage to Syed looms over her like a dark cloud. The dream of a life she once imagined for herself slips further and further away, replaced by the cold reality of her father's control. The day of the wedding arrives, casting an oppressive atmosphere over the village. Zara, dressed in her finest bridal attire, feels like a pawn in a game she never chose to play. Her father, Malik, walks beside her with an air of pride, oblivious to the turmoil in her heart. To him, this marriage is simply another business deal, another way to secure his status. But to Zara, it is the end of everything she knew, her dreams, her freedom, and her future. The ceremony is held in the village square, a place where the wealthiest families gather for celebrations. The air is thick with whispers as the villagers gather to witness the event. Zara, the beloved daughter of Malik, is marrying a beggar. How could this happen? The people of the village stare, gossiping in hushed tones, judging her for the fate she has been forced into. The whispers grow louder, and Zara can feel their eyes on her, scrutinizing her every move. She is no longer the pampered daughter of a rich man. Now, she is the wife of someone seen as beneath her. A beggar with no status, no wealth, and no family to speak of. The humiliation presses down on her chest like a heavy weight, and she feels the sting of betrayal from every direction. As the ceremony progresses, Zara's mind is a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sorrow, confusion. But amid the crowd and the judgment, one person stands calm and composed: Syed. Despite the circumstances, he treats Zara with a kindness and grace that surprises her. When their eyes meet, he offers her a reassuring smile, a silent promise that everything will be okay. His presence, though humble, is comforting in its own quiet way. His calm demeanor soothes Zara's anxiety, and for the first time that day, she feels a flicker of peace. Though she still feels trapped, she can't help but admire the way Syed handles everything with such dignity, as though none of this bothers him. The wedding ceremony concludes with minimal fanfare. There is no grand celebration, no festive music or lavish feasts, just quiet conversations among the villagers, the awkward silence of Zara's new reality settling in. As the evening falls, Zara leaves the square with Syed by her side, the weight of the day heavy on her shoulders. When they arrive at Syed's home, a small, weathered cabin at the edge of the village, Zara is confronted with the stark contrast between her previous life and this one. The cabin is humble, with a thatched roof and cracked windows that let in the chill of the evening air. There is no grand furniture, no ornate decorations, just simple, functional pieces. The modesty of it all feels like a slap in the face to Zara, who spent her life surrounded by luxury. The bed is small and uninviting, the floor made of rough-hewn wood. There are no servants here, no maids to tend to her every need. It is a far cry from the grand mansion she grew up in, where every whim was catered to. Zara stands in the doorway, staring at the modest interior, feeling lost and displaced. She is surrounded by the smell of wood and earth, the sounds of crickets chirping outside the window. This is not her world. She doesn't belong here. The thought of living in such humble conditions fills her with resentment, and she longs for the comfort and opulence of her father's mansion. But there is no going back. She is trapped in this new life, with a man she hardly knows. For days, Zara struggles to adjust to her new life. She resents the simple tasks that Syed asks her to do, like sweeping the floor or cooking their meals. She is uncomfortable with the lack of luxury, the absence of servants, and the quiet, slow pace of life. She misses the fast-paced life of the village elite, the constant activity, the grand gatherings, and the attention she once received. Instead, here, in the quiet of her new home, There is only the sound of Syed's calm voice guiding her through each day. Despite her resentment, Zara begins to notice something in Syed that she had not expected. Wisdom. Though he lives in poverty, Syed possesses a deep understanding of life that seems beyond his years. He teaches Zara lessons in humility, patience, and kindness, qualities she never learned from her father. He shows her that wealth is not about material possessions, but about the richness of one's character. Through his stories and gentle guidance, Syed begins to open Zara's eyes to the world around her, helping her see the beauty in simplicity, the value of patience, and the importance of finding peace in the present moment. At first, Zara resents these lessons. She feels as though Syed is trying to make her accept a life she never wanted, to make her see the value in things she finds beneath her. But slowly, she begins to understand. There is a quiet strength in Syed's way of life, a peace that she never had before. His wisdom is not something he boasts about. It is something he lives by every day, in his actions and his words. Zara finds herself beginning to respect him, even though she still wishes for the life she once had. As the days pass, Zara starts to change. The walls of resentment begin to crack, and she finds herself letting go of some of the expectations she once held. She begins to appreciate the small things, the quiet mornings spent tending to the garden, the simple meals shared with Syed, the peace that comes from living a life unencumbered by wealth and status. Syed's presence, his calm demeanor, and his wisdom begin to transform her, slowly unraveling the tight grip her father's world had on her heart. Though it is not easy, Zara begins to see the world through a different lens, one shaped by the humility and grace that Syed embodies. And though she still misses the comforts of her old life, she starts to realize that this new life, though far from perfect, holds something more valuable than all the wealth and status her father ever promised her. It holds the promise of true peace, of finding richness in the simplest of things, and perhaps even a love she never expected. As Zara's life slowly shifts from resentment to acceptance, she becomes more attuned to the subtleties of Syed's character. His calm demeanor, his steady hand in the face of adversity, and his wisdom begin to intrigue her. In the beginning, she thought it was just his nature, perhaps the result of living a simple life for so long. But as the days stretch into weeks, Zara starts to notice something else. Syed is not like any other man she has known. There is an air of mystery around him that she can't quite place. While most people would be ruffled by the challenges they face in life, whether financial, social, or personal, Syed remains untouched. Nothing seems to faze him, and in his presence, Zara begins to feel a strange sense of peace, even in the most trying of circumstances. One evening, as Zara is cleaning the small cabin, she stumbles upon an old, leather-bound book hidden beneath a loose floorboard. It's a curious discovery. She had never seen it before, and it seems out of place in their humble home. As she opens it, the first thing she notices are the intricate family crests on the pages, the lavish handwriting, and the mention of a powerful family, Syed's family. She hesitates for a moment, but her curiosity pushes her forward. The pages are filled with accounts of wealth, power, and a prestigious lineage that once commanded respect across the land. Her heart races as she reads more. Syed, the beggar, was not just any beggar. He was the heir to a noble family, a family that had once ruled over vast lands and enjoyed the luxuries of wealth. The book reveals the downfall of Syed's family, how they had lost everything in a series of unfortunate events. Betrayals, poor decisions, and the sudden loss of their wealth had left the family broken. Syed, who had once enjoyed the privileges of wealth and power, had chosen to live a humble life in order to escape the burden of his family's legacy. He had made a conscious decision to forsake his inheritance, turning his back on a life of luxury and political intrigue, choosing instead a life of simplicity and redemption. He had left behind the trappings of power, not because he had to, but because he wanted to cleanse himself of the taint of his family former glory. As Zara processes this new information, a mixture of awe and confusion fills her heart. She confronts Syed that evening, her voice trembling with the weight of her discovery. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asks, her eyes searching his face for answers. Syed's expression remains calm, as always, but this time, Zara sees a flicker of something deeper, a sadness perhaps, or a hidden regret. He sits her down, and in his soft voice, he begins to tell her the story of his past. Syed reveals that he had been born into a family of unimaginable wealth, surrounded by power and privilege from an early age, but with wealth came corruption, greed, pride, and the destructive pursuit of control. His family's downfall was not due to external forces, but rather their own moral decay. Syed had watched as his family's reputation crumbled, how they were consumed by their own ambitions. In the end, they lost everything, not just their wealth, but their integrity, their respect, and their honor. Syed had been a witness to this destruction, and the burden of their mistakes had weighed heavily on his heart. His decision to leave everything behind was not one of escape, but of redemption. He wanted to shed the heavy mantle of privilege and power that had come to define his life. He wanted to start anew, to live a life where he could find true peace, free from the shadow of his family's legacy. His choice to live as a beggar, to embrace humility and simplicity, was his way of seeking redemption. Not for his family, but for himself. He knew that the path to healing lay not in reclaiming what was lost, but in finding meaning in the life he had left. Zara listens intently, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. She begins to understand that Syed's wisdom, his calm, and his unshakable nature were not born from a lack of experience or hardship, but from years of painful self-discovery. His transformation from a man of privilege to a man of humility was not easy, and it had required a depth of understanding that Zara could never have imagined. He had chosen a path that many would view as strange or unnecessary, but for him, it was the only way to reconcile with his past and find peace within himself. As the days pass, Zara reflects on what Syed has shared with her. She begins to see him in a new light, no longer just the humble beggar she had once resented, but a man who had suffered great loss and come out the other side with a wisdom she could never have fathomed. Zara starts to question her own life, her own sheltered existence under her father's control. She realizes that the things she had once valued, wealth, status, and social standing, were not the true measures of a person's worth. The true value of life, she understands now, lies in one's ability to find peace, to accept the past, and to move forward with grace. Syed's secret changes everything for Zara. She no longer sees him as just a poor man, but as someone who had made a choice, a conscious decision to live authentically, to find meaning in simplicity. His transformation serves as a mirror for her own journey. As she learns more from him, she begins to let go of her own preconceived notions of what life should be. Slowly, she starts to embrace the lessons he has taught her, the value of humility, patience, and living for something beyond material wealth. Zara's internal struggle shifts from resentment to admiration. She may never fully understand why Syed chose this path, but she now recognizes the strength it took to walk it. As she becomes more attuned to Syed's wisdom, Zara begins to transform herself. She no longer seeks validation from her father's wealth or her former life. Instead, she begins to look inward, finding strength in the simplicity and peace that Syed has cultivated. And in this quiet, humble life, Zara starts to see the possibility of something she had long forgotten. A future that is hers to shape. A life that is no longer defined by the expectations of others, but by the choices she makes for herself. The storm hit with an intensity the village had never experienced before. Dark clouds loomed overhead, as winds howled like wolves through the trees, and the heavens opened up, sending torrents of rain cascading down. In a matter of hours, the once tranquil village was torn apart. Homes were flooded, crops destroyed, and livestock swept away by the raging floodwaters. The villagers were in chaos, running from place to place, trying to salvage what they could, their faces twisted in fear and despair. Zara stood at the edge of the village, watching the destruction unfold. Her heart ached as she took in the sight of her beloved home being ravaged by nature's fury. The mansion where she had grown up, her father's pride, was submerged in water, and all of the wealth and luxury it had once symbolized was now rendered powerless. For the first time in her life, Zara realized that money and status meant nothing when faced with the forces of nature. She glanced over at Syed, who stood beside her, his face calm as ever. While the storm raged around them, he exuded a quiet strength that seemed to center the chaos. Syed didn't waste a moment in panic. He immediately took charge, organizing the villagers into groups to begin recovery efforts. He instructed some to gather what materials were still salvageable, others to check on the injured, and others still to tend to the livestock that had somehow survived the flooding. Zara, still in shock from the storm's fury, hesitated for a moment. But seeing Syed in action, calmly directing everyone without a hint of fear or frustration, she felt an undeniable pull to join him. She had spent most of her life shielded from the harsh realities of the world, but now, in the face of this crisis, she realized there was no time for hesitation. She walked beside Syed, feeling her purpose shift with each step. Together, they moved through the wreckage, offering help wherever they could. Syed's wisdom shone in moments like these. He never panicked, never seemed overwhelmed, and always knew exactly what to do. As they helped others, Zara felt a profound sense of admiration for the man she had once resented. She had married him under duress, believing him to be beneath her, and now, here he was, not only saving the village, but doing so with a quiet grace that spoke volumes about his character. He was everything she'd once thought she needed in a husband. Powerful, influential, respected. But it was until now that she saw the real strength of his heart. Syed had shown her the truth about life's true wealth, the strength of character, the willingness to help others, and the humility to face challenges without losing one's integrity. In the weeks that followed, Zara worked side by side with Syed to help rebuild the village. They coordinated efforts to repair homes, restore crops, and provide shelter to the homeless. Syed's humility shone through every action. He worked just as hard as anyone else, never seeking recognition or praise. Zara, on the other hand, started to realize that the life she had once thought was so empty and insignificant held more meaning than she could ever have imagined. The work was grueling, but there was a sense of fulfillment that came from it. Something Zara had never felt in her previous life of luxury. As she helped to rebuild the homes of the villagers, she also began to rebuild herself. She had once been trapped by her father's expectations, her mind filled with insecurity and the constant pressure to live up to an image of wealth and power. Now, standing among the people she had once thought of as beneath her, Zara found herself becoming more confident, more self-assured. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the village began to recover from the storm's destruction, Zara sat with Syed outside their humble home. They looked out over the village, which was slowly beginning to come back to life. Zara's heart swelled with pride as she saw the progress they had made together. She turned to Syed, her voice filled with gratitude. "I never knew," Zara began, her eyes welling with tears. "I never understood what true wealth was until now. I thought it was about money, about power, about what people thought of you. But now, I see it's about kindness, strength, and the willingness to help others, no matter what." Syed smiled softly, his eyes warm with understanding. "True wealth is measured by the love we give and the lives we touch," he said. "It's the mark we leave on the world, not the things we accumulate." Zara nodded, her heart full. She realized that the life she had once thought was beneath her had transformed her in ways she never could have imagined. She had broken free from her father's control, from the insecurities that had once bound her. She had discovered a new strength within herself, one that wasn't defined by wealth or status, but by her actions, her choices, and her love for those around her. Zara now understood that her life was not about pleasing others or living up to expectations. It was about living with purpose and integrity. She had come to see the true meaning of family, of community, and of the power of resilience in the face of adversity. And in that quiet, humble village, surrounded by people who cared for one another, Zara knew that her life had transformed in ways she had never expected. She was no longer the sheltered girl living under her father's thumb. She was a woman of strength, kindness, and wisdom, ready to shape her own future. In the end, Zara's journey wasn't just about Syed's transformation. It was about her own. It was about breaking free from the chains of the past and embracing a life of true wealth, one that was built on love, humility, and the quiet strength that comes from doing good for others. And with Syed by her side, Zara knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever before. As the village continued to rebuild, whispers of Zara and Syed's leadership spread far and wide. Their tireless efforts, the grace with which they handled the aftermath of the storm, and their unwavering commitment to the villagers were impossible to ignore. Word of their selflessness reached Malik, Zara's father, who had heard little else since the storm, but the tale of how his daughter had become an unlikely hero in her new life. Malik, a man who had spent his entire life cultivating power and prestige, was initially furious upon hearing about his daughter's marriage to Syed. He had always believed in his authority, in the belief that his wealth and status gave him control over Zara's destiny. The news of his daughter living in poverty with a beggar, someone he had deemed beneath her, was a sharp blow to his ego. His pride had been bruised beyond measure, and he had struggled to accept her new life, even more so after the storm. However, as he continued to hear more about Zara's transformation, Malik began to realize something he had never considered before. His daughter was no longer the sheltered girl he had raised. She was someone new, stronger, wiser, and more capable than he had ever given her credit for. He heard about how she had thrown herself into the recovery efforts with Syed, working tirelessly alongside the villagers, without once lamenting her fall from grace. Slowly but surely, Malik began to see the truth that had been right in front of him all along. Zara had found a life of fulfillment and meaning, one that did not rely on wealth or status. After weeks of internal struggle, Malik knew that he could not ignore what had happened any longer. He had to face his daughter and apologize for his mistakes. His pride had kept him distant for too long, but now he saw the woman Zara had become, and he was proud of her, even if he hadn't understood her choices before. One afternoon, after the recovery efforts had reached a steady pace, Malik made his way to Syed's humble cabin. He had dressed in his finest clothes, but the arrogance that once accompanied his appearance had been replaced with a quiet humility. He approached the small house and knocked softly on the door. Zara, who had been working in the garden, stood up in surprise when she saw her father. A whirlwind of emotions rushed through her. She had not seen Malik since her marriage and had no idea how to feel about his unexpected visit. Her father, whose presence had once loomed large in her life, now seemed almost foreign to her. But despite the awkwardness, Zara felt a glimmer of hope. She had longed for this reconciliation, even if she had never admitted it to herself. "Father," Zara said softly, her voice betraying a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "What brings you here?" Malik took a deep breath and stepped forward, his eyes downcast for a moment. He looked at Zara, taking in the change in her, the strength in her posture, the determination in her eyes, and the way she held herself. This was no longer the delicate, sheltered daughter he had once known. This was a woman who had lived and learned, someone who had found her own way in the world. He felt a surge of pride mixed with regret. "I came to apologize," Malik said, his voice steady but filled with sincerity. "For everything. for forcing you into a life that wasn't yours to choose, for not understanding the woman you were becoming. I was wrong, Zara. I should have supported you, not tried to control you. I see now that you've found a life that suits you, and I admire you for it." Zara stood still, taken aback by her father's words. For so long, she had lived under the shadow of his expectations, never daring to challenge his authority. But now, she saw a man who had been humbled by the very things he had once thought of as beneath him. A man who had recognized that true wealth didn't lie in gold or power, but in the strength of one's character. "I never wanted to disappoint you, Father," Zara replied, her voice gentle but firm. "But I had to live my own life. I had to make my own choices, even if they were hard. I've found happiness, and I've found who I really am. This life is what I needed, not the one you had planned for me." Malik nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had spent his life believing that power, wealth, and status would bring happiness. But Zara's journey had taught him something invaluable. True happiness was found in the freedom to choose, in the love and respect of those around you, and in the ability to live authentically. "I've come to accept that, Zara," Malik said quietly. "I see now that the life you've chosen with Syed is one full of purpose and meaning. I can't undo the past, but I can be here for you now. I want to be a part of your life again, if you'll let me." Zara felt a tear slip down her cheek, but it wasn't one of sadness. It was a tear of release, of healing. For so long, she had longed for her father's approval, but now she realized that his love and acceptance didn't come from him trying to control her. It came from him understanding who she had become. "I'd like that, Father," Zara whispered, stepping forward to embrace him. "I'd like that very much." In that moment, Malik and Zara reconciled, not just as father and daughter, but as two people who had both grown and changed in ways they never could have predicted. Malik's apology marked the beginning of a new chapter in their relationship, one based on mutual respect, understanding, and love. Zara knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but with Syed by her side and her father now supporting her, she felt a newfound strength. She had chosen her path, and it had led her to a life of true fulfillment. As she stood beside her husband, looking out over the village they had helped rebuild, Zara knew that her story was far from over. It had only just begun. As the weeks passed, the village slowly but surely began to recover from the devastating storm. What had once been a collection of broken homes and disheartened people was now a thriving, united community. The villagers worked hand in hand, helping each other rebuild their homes and their lives. Zara and Syed, having become pillars of strength during the crisis, remained at the heart of this recovery. Their once humble cabin now served as a place of counsel and guidance, as the villagers came to them not only for practical help, but for wisdom. Zara had transformed in ways she never thought possible. The sheltered life she had once led, with its constraints and expectations, felt like a distant memory. In its place was a new sense of independence and strength that she had discovered through the trials and tribulations of her marriage to Syed. Her father's visit and apology had marked the final step in her journey towards self-realization. But it was Syed's love, wisdom, and unwavering support that had truly shaped her into the woman she had become. She had learned that true wealth was not measured by material things. It wasn't in the grand mansions or the jewels or the power that her father had always coveted. No, true wealth was found in kindness, in community, in love, and in the quiet strength of character that Syed had shown her from the very beginning. Together, they had created a life that was richer in spirit than anything she could have ever imagined. The villagers now looked at Zara and Syed, not with pity or judgment, but with admiration and respect. The quiet humility with which they lived their lives had become an example for others to follow. Zara had been a symbol of what it meant to embrace change, to live authentically, and to find happiness not in the trappings of society, but in the simple, meaningful moments shared with those you loved. With Syed by her side, Zara felt truly free. She had shed the weight of her past, of the expectations and the judgment, and had embraced the person she was meant to be. She had learned to love not only her husband but herself, and in doing so, had found a happiness that no amount of wealth could ever have provided. As they stood together, looking over the village they had helped rebuild, Zara felt a deep sense of contentment. The village was flourishing, the people were healing, and Zara and Syed had found a future built on love, strength, and mutual respect. Their story, one of transformation and redemption, was just beginning. Zara knew that there would be challenges ahead, but with the lesson she had learned from Syed, with the support of her reconciled father, and with the love they all shared for each other, she felt ready for anything. Together, they would continue to build their lives, brick by brick, just as they had done with the village. And in the end, it was clear, true wealth was not something you could hold in your hands, but something you carried in your heart. The future was bright, and Zara's journey had only just begun.